if that's okay. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
And Gillian's here. Gillian, hi Gillian. Gillian is Fran's foster granny, who's foster mom, who's in grade 2 class, Mikkel's class.
Sorry, I couldn't get into the Zoom.
Okay.
But I'm in.
So Gillian, you both shared Jason as a class teacher.
Who's both?
Both you, Gillian and Cassetta, you're both parents of Jason's class.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I see someone else joining us. That's nice. But it's unnamed. Let's see who this is. Hello there.
I know Asunda was trying to join, but I've come there. We were going to listen together.
So is that Asunda? Usually Asunda's name.
I don't know. I don't know if she's going to get one.
So someone's joined us without a name. Who's with us?
Is it me? Is it Carla?
Hi, Carla. Hello.
Hi, Mark.
I'm going to name you so people can see you. Carla.
Okay.
Carla's mom in grade R, Gillian grade 2, and Cassetta here is a few children, grade 2, 4, and 6. Okay, good. So that's a good response. In we didn't. We're not enjoying Lawrence, who really wanted to be here, but we'll record it for him. Can we? I think perhaps Cassetta. Do you want to open the conversation? I think it'll. Now that we do have a group, I think it could be a more of a significant sharing. Let's see where it goes.
Sure. Maybe a first comment that I'll make is there's a lot of talk about AI, and there has been for a while, but something very significant has shifted in the last couple of months. So it's worth noting that. The second thing I would say is AI is not the only disruptive technology that's going to rewire our economy. There's things like 3D printing and so on that we need to be aware of, and a sensor-led world that wires things like smart cities, etc. So AI in itself is a very virtual and heady concept, and you might dismiss it because it's just that it's virtual, it's content, if you will, but it connects with other things to really make powerful things possible. So that's all. So we shouldn't really focus on AI only, especially in a school and learning context. We should connect it to the physical world and community, and so that it's meaningful, its power, it's meaningfully applied. That's the most important thing I would say for this conversation. And then to clarify what has changed so dramatically in AI, the initiative by OpenAI, it's an organization led by Elon Musk and other people, and significant investment by Microsoft. And it was set up to counter the concerns for society of the AI revolution, that a few people that are already powerful in tech, big tech, would be the only ones that had privileged access to the technology. They had superpowers like the best software engineers and, just very privileged data sets that you train on. And so therefore nobody else would be able to play in this game. And that would be a very dangerous evolution. So OpenAI is an organization that was set up to counter that. Mm-hmm. And what they've introduced is a very capable, one of the most capable, open source, like it's open to the public, artificial intelligence technology. And they've had it for the last 2+ years for universities, other people that are concerned about AI to play with it, entrepreneurs, and on a free basis. So it's been there. So what changed in the last 2 months is that this particular OpenAI initiative, which is called ChatGPT, it used to be GPT, but now it's able to understand human language. And it understands it not in a rote robotic way, but at a fundamental level understands natural human expression. It can understand your questions, it can interpret emotion, intention, etc., and then respond. And for the most part, is indistinguishable from another human. So you've had it, for example, interviewed on Channel 4 and various other media, mainstream media. Instead of interviewing an expert on AI, they actually interview the AI to understand this new emerging technology, even things like what is the implications for society, etc. So that's what's changed, that this technology suddenly has become available to children, never mind, advanced engineers. So now it isn't a superpower available just to a few big tech companies. So that's what's profound. And what's even more profound is within 2 weeks of its release, how many businesses and cool things, applications were developed using this capability. So we can go into more detail. I'm not sure details available. People have enough context about it, but it is very significant, very fast-paced at which it's being employed in all sorts of contexts, including the organization where I work, which is a large bank. Mark?
Great. So that sounds fascinating. I didn't know the history. I had no idea there's a constructive process here to resist the power of the big powers, big business, big government.
Yeah.
And so just to understand, it would be helpful to list. So we've got AI in the terms of this ChatGPT. And then what are the different things you see that's emerging, like 3D printing? What can you?
I'll just, there's others listed, but two others that I think are so significant in how the economy is going to unfold going forward is 3D printing, the advancement in 3D printing. And I guess you've got to think beyond the versions on a desktop and think about the manufacturing sort of scale, including using metals. An example that I like to give there is, there's in emerging world, it does not make sense to ship a washing machine from some far off place, right? What is valuable is the design, the IP, if you will, of the washing machine, how it hangs together. So you should be able to get the digital file. So that's virtual, it's easy, it's cheap, delivered to your local 3D printing shop. Think of Postnet. And then any part should be a mile away from you. So that it kind of manifests in the physical world in the last mile. What that means for our economic paradigm, I'm using big terms, but that's my interpretation now, Mark, is that we've reached the end, if you read some commentary from The Economist magazine itself, of these long value chains. They're risky, we'll know for various reasons, they're costly, etc. And so it's not necessary to have these long value chains. We can share the IP of whatever we want to make physically or manufacture, and the manufacturing cost, the technology is become low enough for you to have more federated production centers for pretty much any physical good. I think one of the shoe companies, I saw my YouTube feed the other day, printed their shoes, Adidas, or I can't remember what it is, 3D printing, and you'll hear a lot on, well, it's not quite there and it's too expensive and that's not a reality yet. But because these things that we're mentioning, 3D printing, Internet of Things is the other one, sensors basically, and AI, because they're exponential technologies, the reality now is radically different. In fact, Mark, maybe you can explain it mathematically better for a year from now than now. It's radically different, the price points, the power of these technologies. So you've got to look at this being an immediate evolution, sort of short term, not a medium, long term evolution.
Okay. So these two things, the 3D printing and therefore manufacturing world, and I'm assuming that also means everything in terms of import and export of these goods.
Yeah.
And then then this ChatGPT, which so I've experienced it over the holidays, where we asked ChatGPT a story, and we said, make up a story on Mars with I asked the kids what they would like it about, and they chose a fairy plus a monster, and it's on Mars with a particular kind of accent, and it's got a wild dog in it, and then immediately within a few seconds it had quite a lengthy story that was quite readable about everything they'd asked for. It was quite a fascinating experience. So I'm thinking what might be helpful to invite we've got a few people on the call. It would be interesting to know where you stand on this, and therefore out of that, so there is already the comment that's happened previously with Cassetta and Lawrence, Nicola's dad, and myself when we talked last week, I think, where we spoke of if these skills are going to be, if so many intelligent skills that we see as human are going to be taken over by technology in the future, what is retained, and what remains as uniquely human, and then how do we design a school curriculum to educate for that? Is that a fair question from our conversation earlier? Okay, so I'm guessing there's a variety of others, but let's just go around the virtual circle, and Carla has something to say, and then after that, perhaps Gillian, and that's it. Carla, go for it.
Thanks, Mark. I think to touch on what Cassette was saying from a design perspective, I think it would be beneficial to incorporate design with these technological developments, because design is more like a problem-solving thinking. So if you're looking at solving problems, it's irrespective of what the technology will be to solve the problem, if that makes sense, and also just to expand on what Cassette was saying from a 3D printing perspective. I think people in, I don't know if it's Central Africa or somewhere, they've been printing 3D houses as well, and I believe trees now, or wood. They've been 3D printing or experimenting with 3D printing wood. So there's like I think from the perspective of technology or going off the grid, if you will, there's the element of saving energy and being natural and all that stuff, but then when you're producing these solar panels or these wind farms or whatever, windmills on the wind farms, what are you using to produce those? Whatever you're producing to make these solar panels is not necessarily eco-friendly, so to speak, or the way in which you're producing these things. So from my perspective, I would like to suggest like a design element incorporated with the technology.
Great, excellent. That rings true. Anecdotally, I know of a school south of San Francisco called Nueva, who have a relationship, I think, with Stanford, and they've got a little unit, a design unit in their school where children can go and explore and play. It would be fascinating if we could have a design unit. My former lecturer, Barry Dulatsky, or something like that, admits there might be a way of having some kind of explorative little space or at least a time in the calendar and timetable to play and explore and come up with ideas of what one can do. Just comes to mind. Gillian, do you have anything to ask or comment? Haldane, you're muted.
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
I have no idea how relevant I'm being, because it's all still very obscure, this whole thing. And I was really interested in what Carla was saying about something, but I'd have to think about it more to respond. So as I'm listening, and the incredible convenience, like a washing machine or anything else, you know, not importing, exporting, etc. So it sounds very practical, sensible, super convenient. And when I hear that, I have lots of alarm bells ringing. So that's how they draw us into where they want us, is through the incredible convenience. I mean, I'm using a cell phone. I might, whatever I know about its the harm and the GMF and all of that stuff to me and anyone around, it's become not only so convenient but essential. Unless one's living up in a mountain somewhere or whatever, you know, set up in a different way. So so yeah, the danger of falling for convenience, and how it's used by what I call the dark circle, or the demonic circles, or those, yeah, working working through these people. So they have a plan for us. It's not a friendly one.
Sorry, I'm just going to quieten my dog. Sorry, Jillian.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So yes. So there's the fear. The fear of what this might mean is really, yeah, I think, scaring a lot of people.
Yeah, but it's not just fear, because I mean, it is going to happen. They're doing what they're doing, and they'll do it no matter what. And they're going to do it. And they're on their way to something much bigger that deprives of our humanity and our freedom on every level. So it's sort of, what can we do within that? So one of the things I feel about schools and education is that the education has to be so nourishing and nurturing of our spirits and soul and spirit, so to speak, that's something that can develop with these children. I'm not going to live in that, but they are, despite the whole robotic futuristic thing, that there's something there that can hold their humanity, some light and flame, and that has to come from their surroundings, so their school and their families, basically.
Interesting, Gillian. How does that sound, Carla and Cassetto? Any comments there?
Well, my main comment. So we're just giving context on these technologies, and they're there, and they will continue to be there, whether you like it or not, right? So this is a conversation about what do we do about it. My first point is what Gillian was saying, is that over and above anything, that we, if anything, don't overindulge in the technology. If they take the cue from adults and schools and so on, that this is the new toy and we're all going to be obsessed by it, then we're lost, because these are young minds also. So the most important thing is all the things that really do truly, and maybe this thing makes it even more clear, this AI, do truly make us human. So human relationships, awareness of the context you live in, I think of community or neighborhood scale, and maybe some issue that needs to be resolved, you know, across the road, and social interactions, etc. And so from within that, if you happen to want to engage with the topic, so schools often do, and you explore it, you know, in content, so as a subject, if you will, you may take a further step and want to build a solution, to intervene somehow. Call it a project. Schools have always done that, right? And then only really down the line, and I love what Carla is saying, this design thinking framework is, you're going to think about, and usually you do it by talking to human beings and understanding what is the problem at Zoo Lake with the something kind of plant dying, or whatever it is, whatever the issue is, right? So you engage with it in conversation and understand the problem, if there's a problem or an opportunity, way before you decide what tool you're going to throw at it. And to be honest with you, AI has got such a specific application that it may not be AI, but it's more important your humanity and want to be relevant as a human believe in your agency. And the second thing is know how to apply that agency. And I love design thinking as a framework to say, well, in order to do this, seems complex, let's break it down and do something like you do with your maths problems, right? And somewhere in there, you might want to use, I don't know, a sensor that behaves a certain way when it goes dark or something, so you can save electricity at the school, or whatever it is, right? And then somewhere in there, you may want to learn behavior of how these sensors are working, and you might throw an AI and it optimizes it. You know what I mean? It's so far down the line when you bring in AI. You're human all the way in a physical world and in real relationships. At some point, you pick up a tool. AI happens to be one of them. And I think that's the hierarchy when you think of education also. Rather focus on the real world and fascinating things, and throwing the tool way down the line if it's appropriate. And the judgment of when it's appropriate or not, and to use it as leverage is what we, I think, in an education context, need to make sure that it's developed. The judgment, right? Not the being enamored by the technology and then overtaken by playing with it for endless hours.
Sure. So it's so difficult to imagine what's happening, but it does. At the moment, there's such an enormous emphasis on very accurate literacy and handwriting and spelling and being able to copy a text and remember facts. And so much of that is going to just be so outdated. What's useful is that so much of that is not very human. It's just recall, and it's stuck in an old kind of schooling system. But at the same time, it's very difficult to leapfrog into a different paradigm and adjust the system. So I think what's interesting is that part of school is set up that is not very human friendly because of the recall oriented memory rote learning kind of system, and the testing system is unhelpful. But at the same time, it's a huge challenge to imagine what this might mean now for the future. But I think it's vital that we do try and imagine what's, even within a medium term, when our children today are reaching 18 years old, or with their careers, what is that going to be? I don't know if it's possible really to pose these questions practically, to actually imagine some kind of practical prediction.
Yeah, I think we have to remember that I actually cannot imagine what these children are going to be living into, because they have come in prepared for that, willing to meet that, and able in some way, whatever it is they're going to get out of it. I'm not from their generation. I'm not at all. So to be always aware, to not think I can imagine what it's going to be like, and therefore arrange something that will meet what I'm imagining, because that's an illusion. And so what you're saying, so what you call the factory schools or the mainstream education, which is very unchild friendly, is part of this that's happening now. It's already been training children, training adults to be, and the whole COVID thing has shown that, to be ready to be directed, controlled in this way, to think they're doing us good, or etc. So those education has been wiping out the possibility for free, independent, creative thinking.
So it occurs to, sorry, Gillian.
Yeah, sorry, no, it's okay. Go.
It occurs to me there could be two trajectories out of this for schools. One is that the AI kind of technology world could help make schools so automated that, like these online schools that are popping up that are partly run by, the Khan Academy is a brilliant software package that a child can learn maths online without much human interaction. So they're just learning ready-made maths curriculum where you can progress and get a matric. You can progress to a very competent level of maths with no human interaction. So there's only one right answer. So you're not getting a human relationship on the maths front. And that applies to the various other subjects. And so the one trajectory could conceivably be that the teacher becomes automated more and more, or the child is empowered to take access to this technology and is able to start becoming a bit freer from the system of the tight control that the curriculum holds on a child. So I'm guessing both is going to happen, but I'm not sure where what the trend is at the moment. We've moved from in 100 years ago, possibly most schools in the world were more like Kairos, which is a tiny little school of a few children in a village learning together. And we've moved to these very large mass schooling systems where you've got a machine factory schooling system over the last, say, 120 years. And I mean, I'm talking in the West, I suppose. And here we've got the new trend. Maybe we're heading more into factory systems, automated schools, or maybe we're not. Maybe we're heading into a system that frees a child, or both. I don't know.
It makes me think when you talk about the maths, and I don't know if it's the same thing, but I had an experience. I was homeschooling, I think 5 children. Family had 7, and so from 5, 6 to 11, and the mother was hooked on Kumon. So totally obsessed about it, and they've been going to Kumon since whenever, years, and they do well at it, And when I came into it and I wrote them out a maths test, so starting really from operations, really simple, up to the 10-year-old level, just to get an idea of where they were at. They couldn't do anything. I don't know. They were so good at the Kumon, filling in this one number or whatever it is they were doing and following that. And they never liked doing it, but still, they really had no understanding of the maths, nothing, no experience and no understanding. And that was really a shocking revelation. It was a revelation to me, absolutely.
I see we've got a new parent in the circle. Amy, thanks for joining us. Any thoughts? I'm guessing Cassetto or Amy, you might have thoughts about these two potential directions we're heading into in terms of this, not Kairos, but schools worldwide, or schools, maybe we could say South Africa. Where might we be heading into? I'm guessing the convenience that Gillian pointed out is going to be very attractive to many schools.
Are you referring to if Khan Academy online personalized can get you there, matric, then what might be the relevance of the smaller curated human-led education? Is that what you're asking?
I suppose I'm thinking that Khan Academy might become more and more a service offered within a school, and in a big school, in an established school. But maybe that's not. I don't know what's at the moment. There's a large emergence of home, and COVID helped instigate the creation of many online schools, and we've seen problems with those children that are coming out of those schools. So there's one thing whether or not that will work with an online service, and meaning even if it's a human teacher on the other side of a screen. But separately, there's the possibility that the teacher in the school is going to defer to the knowledge of a computer, of an AI thing, who's possibly going to be simply more skillful than the teacher. And so the teacher is going to be disempowered to teach.
Well, that's one way it could go, or the teacher could be empowered to teach higher level things. If you look at what a computer will be set up to do, it'll be a narrow slice to build competence on a very, if you will, algorithmic, in a very algorithm maybe. So it would replace the lower end of school, which is the content dumping side, if you will, you know. Or, and if it's something like maths, which can be taught by explaining a concept and practicing and visualizing what that, you know, like you're doing with your graphs and so on, then yeah, I mean, I invite technology and YouTube videos, because they do a better job than a kid trying to have to imagine it, you know. And we're not as good as good drawers as you know, some of your teachers are. So the lower end of school, it could enhance that, make it more efficient, etc. That I have no problem with that. I think what it opens up is for, and this is where the imagination has to kick in on the educator, is well, where the technology leaves off. What are you going to do? I'll give you an example, Mark. You're teaching some really cool calculus. I mean, you're going up to calculus soon, you know. And I'm absolutely astounded how, well, why not? Of course they can understand it. And so I almost at the same time as seeing yesterday's homework, Senai, you returned those headphones, right? And they have a noise canceling, and he tried it. So I just walked into work and he said, "Dad, what is that?" As in, how does that noise canceling work? So if the teacher could talk about the sound and the waves and the sine wave, and there's a difference between a signal and noise, and you pick that up mathematically, and if you can do that, then you can filter out the noise. I mean, I had to wait to university for all that stuff, right? Then it becomes, wow, that's amazing. It's an incredibly empowering thing for a teacher to be able to highlight that. Now, the technology, you know, it's just not possible for technology, unless it's curated, to give you the right understanding of the world around you. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the relevance, because you can be overwhelmed by the amount of concepts and knowledge you can accumulate without any relevance to the real world. That's what happens when you disappear into the gaming world, and we have these teenage issues, right? Inability to relate socially, etc. That's the dangerous direction. But if schools, teachers can be empowered to land the concepts with a technology, I call it an AI assisted assistant, I think that's a wonderful thing. And we should see it as that lower end of what a teacher can do. And that upper end is inviting you to be imaginative and relevant.
So do you imagine an AI assistant being like a access to, so you can ask a question about some factual thing about the world, and then you will be called into a discussion about interpreting the validity of something, or being able to evaluate if it's right or wrong or fair or unfair? It would be interesting to hear some examples.
Some examples may be the same way that you used a dictionary, which I grew up doing. So whenever my dad, I would ask him, "Oh, can you help me spell something? Or can you tell me what something understands?" He says, "Go get the dictionary." And I'd roll my eyes. But the discipline was important to him, right? Now, I don't know if we have a dictionary. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but we do. But we definitely have Wikipedia and Google and so on. So you know, although we have limits on device time, if they're solving a problem, building a thing, etc., research is valid to go onto the internet. You go in, someone explains it, they're competent, and that's okay to do. It's subsidiary to the real world activity we're doing. That's our only principle, right? So in the same way, it's no different. If you look at this AI, there was another sort of mathematical AI, Wolfram Alpha. If you go to that website and you can speak a natural language, the equations like y equals x squared, etc., then it will kind of tell you all sorts of things about it. And if you evolve it a little bit, you can change the values on the x, and it will kind of change the shape and so on, you know. So to see how mathematics is a language and it can be expressed in graphs, that's a thing that took me until O-level and beyond to understand, right? But with a tool like that, I think you can land those messages this year, next year, Mark. So again, that's exactly like the dictionary. It's no more dominant than the dictionary. It's just really good at it.
That's an interesting metaphor, the dictionary, because yeah, we've all relied on that. And
cheat sheet, isn't it?
Yeah. And so it occurs to me, I've got friends who've got this little device in their home that's speech oriented. You ask the thing, either say, please time 3.5 minutes, or you say, what's the population growth of Nicaragua? And you just, it speaks back to you the results. It's an audio, it's a spoken Google factual thing. I'm guessing that kind of thing is going to sit in a classroom, and the children and teacher are going to be having this virtual person able to respond to, join in the discussion in a class. And
how does that make you feel, Mark?
Partly it's exciting for a teacher to be able to have access to quick access kind of to that fact, and it's also it reminds me so much of, I played a chess game last night, a 3-hour chess game, and which is old traditional chess, but that almost never happens these days because people are playing 2-minute chess and 10-minute chess games. And to sit through a proper long, old-fashioned chess game is going out of fashion. It's similar. It's the idea of sitting and concentrating on the thing seems like the capacity to open a dictionary, as Cassetta talked about, and focus and find the mental effort required to open the book, I think sounds a bit of a problem. How are we going to challenge the children to make mental effort? And I think that speaks to the effort of the soul. It's going to be so easy to get anything, that where's the mental effort going to, what are we going to be doing from an effort point of view? I'm sure it will emerge, it will come, the effort will transform it into other kind of tasks, but I just don't know what that might be. So the child might be, yeah.
Yeah, as you're saying this, I'm wondering how the link between, or the relevance of motivation in connection with what you're saying now. But sorry, can I just ask you to repeat the name? I don't know your name, the guy who's being so
Cassetta.
telling us everything. Sorry?
Cassetta. His name is
kind of like a cassette tape. Remember those cassette tapes? You just say cassetta. Or like that Italian ice cream, I'm told.
So when I'm listening to Cassetta, I'm not 100% sure where you're standing. Not that there's anywhere to stand yet, but just for me, I also noticed that you use some words and concepts and things which I don't understand. And that's very interesting because I'm so many generations further on than you are. So like I haven't come into that, which is what I was saying, so easy for you. And it flows from you as though it was part of the language. It was never part of the language that I grew up in, these terms and what they mean. So that's also interesting. And Mark, also when I ask you how you feel about it, I still don't know how you feel about it. I know a little bit, but I don't know how you feel about it. When you hear Cassetta talking these things, do you go, oh, fantastic, you know, I'd love to have this virtual, I don't know what, in the room who answers questions for us, or do you feel a kind of anguish?
So I did mention that I'm feeling excited about the idea of having such more interesting conversations in the classroom, and I'm fearful that the capacity to make significant mental effort for a child is in danger, and I think it's going to mean it's going to require a change in the system of a school when one has such a device in the child's life, either in the classroom or at home, to be able to create tasks that are effortful.
Yes, yes, but don't you? I mean, I see one that you have a choice as a school, as a parent, obviously, but certainly as a school. Are you going to let this in? You know, for its convenience, for its exciting stimulation or challenge to see what the hell happens, etc., etc. You know, so that's a question that, I mean, you will have to answer that question in yourself. Are you going to let this thing into the school? And that just linked with it is what you're saying, but mostly what Cassetta's saying. I'm hearing, correctly or not, this whole question of speed. So yeah, you can learn X and Y and the rest so much quicker. You know, he did it in O levels or university. Now you can, I mean, these kids can get it now. And the extreme danger of speed. So everything, whether you're looking at different crypto utilities and wherever it goes, that speed is the thing. You know, this can now do 1 million in 1 second, and this can now do 1 billion in 1 second. So on our level, and the forgetting the reality that speed kills. So as soon as you're working with speed in any way in school, fast things, doing things speedily, fast singing something, saying whatever it is, you're working with a child's nervous system, and that is where illness arises from that area. Anyway, the whole thing, I know speed kills, and we're all in speed. You know, we're living in a world that is speeding so fast that it's unbelievable, and etc., etc. But that's also what I hear. One has to beware of the convenience of things being learned quicker. For what? You know, I think schools should have gap years included, and apprentices with carpenters, and you know, things like that. You know, to really fill the person that doesn't you know, bring this stuff in at all, because
So,
it's powerful.
Yeah, I think you asked some really valuable questions. Carla's got something to say, and then I know there's this question hovering about Cassetta, where you, and also Amy, where you stand on this question about the AI. I'm inferring where you stand, but it will be helpful to answer directly. Carla, do you want to answer? Just say something first, because you've been quieter, and then back to Cassetta.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think our challenge, or more specifically yours as an educator, is to encourage the kids to think ahead of the technology. You know what I mean? So like, I'll use the carpentry example. I mean, now you don't need to know how to make a table or whatever. You can get a CNC machine to do it for you. So yes, you don't need to know how to make the table yourself, but you need to know how to operate the CNC machine, right? So that's would put you a step ahead from that perspective. So yeah, thinking ahead of the technology.
Carla, did we lose you?
No, oh sorry. What is the ending statement when I'm done with what I've said?
Don't worry. So in terms of, I'm not clear about what you're saying. So to go beyond, so just, I'm not clear. So you can get the change, the technology changes, and
yes.
then.
So what I'm saying is, our challenge as the parents and the educators would be to challenge the kids to think 1 or 2 or however many steps ahead of the technology, you know. So let's say you've invented something now that's helping you solve a problem. You still need to know how that thing operates that you've just invented. And to think beyond that, you know, like if someone improves on that design or on that invention, then think ahead of it. Like there must be something ahead of ChatGPT, as mind-blowing as it is right now, you know. There would be something like for example, maybe now it can do false citations. I read somewhere it can do false citations and make up things that are not true. So that would be the next challenge, I suppose, is to how that doesn't happen, you know.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you, Carla. Cassetta.
Thank you.
And Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, and other than I haven't been involved in depth in these conversations, but I do think the points that have been made around maybe I don't know if this is a term, but non-informational learning. So where we're moving aside from learning history and maths and geography and, you know, social studies or whatever it is, and we're learning actually how to do things. So how to knit, how to build a table, how to, you know, do acrobatics, whatever it is. I don't know, and maybe others can comment where that intersection is with AI, but there may be, I mean, I think there's, like Jillian was saying, I think there's already been a need regardless for us to build more trade and craft into our educational systems, right? Mm. So maybe this pushes us a little bit more in that direction, maybe not, but that would be one thing. And the second thing I think to keep in mind, and again, this is not my area of expertise at all, but you know, when they came out with the e-readers and we're all like, oh my gosh, bookstores are all gonna just, you know, go completely out of business and everything could be digital and isn't gonna be sad, we're all gonna miss paper books. And I remember thinking that, but just kind of going on with my life, and it hasn't happened. It's been they play a role, and there's certain things that I can't find in the bookstore and I read them on my phone, but for the most part, I still go out and buy used books or go to the library or whatever it is. And a lot of people do, and bookstores are still moving, you know what I mean? And they've had plenty of time. So I think it is going to have a tremendous impact, certainly. And technology has been having tremendous impacts sequentially over, you know, 100 years. But this is quite a leap, and it's going to have a tremendous impact. And I do think it's important to be open and to be flexible. But I also think it's not necessarily going to it's not necessarily a monster that's going to take over everything we know. You know what I mean? And so I think the idea of be open to it, let's use it as a tool, but it's not more powerful than we are. It's not beyond our control. And so it's not so much, I think, something to be scared of as much as something to think about how to use effectively. And maybe I'm repeating what was said earlier, so sorry about that.
I just to come in there before Cassetti might have something more. I just anecdotally, I have a neighbor, an elderly neighbor as a 20-year-old, and she remembers the time where phones were invented. And she then remembered how appalled she was and her parents were, how people were going to not knock on the door anymore, but they were just going to phone. So there would be a massive loss of human connection, because she wouldn't get she wouldn't just get people visiting her house anymore in order to speak to them. And there would be this remote connection suddenly, this massive loss of a human visitor. And we still visit each other's houses now, but it's certainly changed. And now that's in the beginning of landlines, and now we've got these things of cell phones. So I think it is that shift that happens. We get on with things, we adapt and we adjust, and we still remain human. And the reality,
wasn't something I read somewhere, and I haven't been able to find more on it, but I think something similar was said with the printing press, when all of a sudden printing could be made accessible to the masses, and how appalling that was, either because of, you know, the elite wanted to hold on to the knowledge, or because people would now be immersed in books instead of going outside and talking to the neighbor, whatever it is. So I think it is good to keep it. And now we revere books, don't we? You know, we're busy trying to teach our children to read at 3 years old. So yeah.
I think there's a similar quote, Amy, of an ancient Greek person who was appalled with the idea that the myths were going to be written down because it was going to destroy people's minds, that they were going to be stuck in not being able, not trying to remember the thing, but just being able to be dependent on the written word. So there is this.
So we do adapt, don't we? And we make the most of these things that are initially appalling.
Yeah.
But they not to forget that that everything these people have said from your neighbor with a phone is true.
Yes.
That we've adapted to it or not doesn't matter, or that we, got our heads full of what we've read in books than people who grew up kind of milking the cows and helping to thatch the roof or whatever it is. They're right. That it's true.
Agreed.
And let's not forget that and think, just because, they thought, but meanwhile, of course we had to have phones and trains. People have been appalled at every stage of that, because we are losing something of our humanity. And at each point, there is that. And now when I listen to everybody, what's been really valuable is that I feel one of the things that's very valuable is that it's serious, because we're, sorry, like Cassetta's lady, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. But
you can
Amy,
call me Cassetta's lady, though. I like that.
But when you say you're not in education, you can't really, and you're not, no, you are completely in it all. We're talking about, in a sense, rescuing humanity. And those are the decisions to make. And I'm not talking about nobody's going to rescue every single person, but rescuing humanity in principle, as an essence, that there's a huge life raft being built. I don't know how to say it, but that's what it comes to. That's what it's about. Besides the AI and the computers and what they're going to do, and these voices that are going to tell us God knows what, etc., etc. Underneath that all.
So, Gillian, I've got something to respond, and that might be the end of the meeting. But I think, Cassetta, do you want to clarify where you stand on this whole picture? So, because you've been balanced and I think it'll be clear for you to declare where you stand on the issue, and then I think I've got also a general point in response.
Just wait, Mark, 1 second, please, because I need you to go to the other room if you're going to be crying. Okay, thanks. Where I stand is with Gillian. This is a crisis for humanity. And I absolutely think we've lost a lot. When the telephone came, we don't even recognize what community means. It's kind of just a concept that sociologists talk about, and they do at WITS, but they're irrelevant also. So anybody that's trying to relevant and save the soul of man is marginal and not in the mainstream. I've never had a Facebook account. I don't know what it feels like. I didn't even try it. And I know where my notification setting on my phone is. It doesn't interrupt me. I don't think anybody's entitled to barge into my day and time anytime they want. And I think speed kills. So I stand with Gillian 100%. Maybe I'll finish off by saying we, for our kids, and that's where the truth shows up, because all of us, I believe it, want the best for our kids. You either put them into that kind of school, which, puts them in ties and whatever, and then shows off about their pass marks, or you give them sabbaticals. We're the sabbatical types, right? So we've got a small holding that we bought for all our souls. And if the project most interesting to me personally comes from permaculture as a food forest. It is way more intelligent than this silly tech that I'm talking about. Way more intelligent. What happens under the soil and in concert at a forest system, forests in particular, right? So that's what we're, dabbling in, a little sort of family venture, if you will. So that just to be clear, that's my position. And along with that is I believe in agency. I'm not going to be sad and give up on humanity. I absolutely believe in humanity. So I'm only one person. And I realize that not everybody has the privilege that I've had, or that we in this conversation have, the kind of education, etc. In that sense, when I hear about someone you can whisper to, it's actually called Whisper, that voice interface, also from OpenAI, and I can set it up in a couple of days, and it's going to talk back to me a little kid in rural Benin, for example, or Ghana or whatever, Zimbabwe or Limpopo, right? And it'll be private, personalized, on demand. Okay, two things get in the way of that is electricity and data. So let's put that aside for now. But if we were to solve that, it is incredibly liberating for the soul of humanity. There is nothing to hold on to as if it's sacrosanct in the current economic paradigm or state of humanity. It's in crisis. So when I look at this technology, I do not feel disempowered by it. I look at it as a thing latent there, and I can draw on it, one. And the second thing is, it's not latent the way other people are using it for misinformation, amassing political power, etc. So for both those reasons, this crisis, this technology should be engaged as welcome and used for good. So I'm very happy to have AI assistance anywhere where it makes sense, and it's got nothing to do with your choices as a soul.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you made that clear, because so that's really inspiring, I think, to think through. I think I want to respond to Gillian's question about what we would do as Kairos, in the sense of, I think education is often envisioned as a creation of society, because we are creating the world for our children's future. But I think there's something of a romance about that that's largely or partly unrealistic, in the sense that most innovations in education have happened as a way of inheriting, and innovations have happened elsewhere outside the schooling system, outside educational systems, and schools have taken on ideas from outside themselves and applied them in the schools. So seldom usually the shifts in society have not come from the schools, but the schools have been taking ideas from elsewhere. And at the moment, lots of ideas are coming from the business world. And so nonviolent communication, for instance, does not come from a school. It comes from an adult world of responding to war. And many schools have taken a nonviolent communication and applied it within a school. And I think that is a general point, that this shift is happening in society, and it's not a choice for a school to include it or not. This thing is going to be like the telephone, and all schools have telephones now they use telephones in the same way. This AI is simply going to be a new device that we're going to have in our children's lives and our families. And it's not a question of whether or not it will come in. It's going to come in regardless. And so what do we do about it? And I love the idea that partly we need to get into the earth, and we need to go and do something connecting to our absolute core roots of what is it mean to be alive as being humans on the earth, and how do we make food, for instance, and separately, how do we retain our agency as human individuals, and see any kind of technology as a tool, not something that controls us. But I think it's going to be a very open, interesting. The shifts. It's fascinating living through we've lived through COVID, which we felt a global shift going on, but suddenly there's this other shift that potentially is more lasting, of this technology that we're going to need to be quite proactive, not to be left behind in terms of what's going on. And
sorry,
yeah.
I have to say something, Mark. Sorry, I always have to say something, because when you say left behind, it sort of rings all bells for me. And that's for another discussion. Left behind, that doesn't mean one's left behind. And also you said, and obviously it's a process, you can't make the answers now, you've got to live with it and feel with it and whatever, but you said it's got to come in regardless. So I'm just positing an opposite sort of, what do you call that? whatever it is. It doesn't have to come in regardless. It will come in through your children and through what they're getting from their homes, family, etc., etc. So I'm just thinking, if I have a school, it will not come in at all. I'm not saying that would be real, but I'd say it will not come in at all, because I want a place where everything that happens that's significant and rich and nourishing can happen without that. It's not relevant to true education or true development. It isn't, and the forces behind it. And one's got to look into beings, because we don't live on just a physical world. The impetus is to destroy us. It's not to educate us or develop us or blah blah.
So I think let me respond, Gillian, and I'd love this to continue in the future, this conversation, but it is after 5, so I think I need to bring it to a close. But it's very rich and very interesting to have not a single voice going on in this conversation. So it's really helpful that we've got different ideas here. I do want to say that it's interesting to compare teacher friends, teaching experience with a boarding school in England and Kairos day school, because it's very, very clear that the children, even though we've got a tight management of ideals and what works for us as a school, the majority of children are on devices and are many times on social media and are in computer games and in many different parts of life that are not healthy, despite our attempt to manage it. And we can't simply say it's not there unless we tightly control a boarding school. And if we had a boarding school itself, that also has its own problematic side effects if we control it too tightly. So there is a question of, regardless of what we do, the children have their own lives and the families have their own lives, and the families are diverse, and we do want a diversity of beliefs and approaches to life. So even if you said you wouldn't allow it in the school grounds, it's not necessarily going to be not in your school, because the children, it's in their children's lives when they are at home. So therefore it's in the school. I am very grateful for a really rich conversation. I'm hoping it might continue and grow, but let's pause there, and maybe one day we can visit your property, Cassetta and Amy. And
you'd be so welcome, all of you.
That would be really amazing. And let's see where it goes. We'll discuss, I suppose. Let's discuss offline I'll put the video out to the community and see if there's a growing interest. And there might be some nuggets here that will provoke future conversations. So please engage and send some comments offline if you feel like we should emphasize certain points for future discussions.
Mark, it's a real, I guess, privilege to be part of this community, that you would facilitate a conversation. It's a hard one like this, and I don't know where it goes. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere. I'd be happy if it doesn't enter our school, and it's fine. But it's important to be conscious about it, and that is very good of you to set this up. Thanks.
Wonderful.
No, thank you. It's been very, very rich and very important and significant, I think.
Thank you. Thank
nice
you all.
Meeting you all. Take care.
Carla, thank you.
Bye, Carla. Bye, Gillian.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Right.
Take care. Bye, Gillian, Mark.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.